some faith in the Washington Commanders? I guess again, I thought that I was going to be the highest on the Washington Commanders, and you got them barely missing the playoffs, finishing 8-9. So, talk to me about the Commanders. What you think about this team? Obviously, you're pretty hyped about them, but give me an offensive MVP as we kind of start this conversation here.
Yeah, so I think first the foundation. I really like the hiring of Dan Quinn and Adam Peters running this team, and I think the first place you saw that was this was my favorite draft class in the league, top to bottom. Jaden Daniels, Johnny Newton, Mike Sainristil, Luke McCaffrey, Ben Sinnott, Brendan Coleman, all the way down to the bottom. Guys, I can't even remember. It was such a huge draft class. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I loved every single guy they drafted. I really did. I think I said it on draft day to you. I think if you were going to reset a team and build a new foundation in a rebuild, this is the way to do it. This was the draft class. I have absolutely loved Jaden Daniels. I don't think there's a bigger fan of Jaden Daniels in this building than me. I've said that for months. I think honestly, Trev, I had him QB1. I did, and I know people. Everybody here called me crazy taking him over Caleb, but I really think, and I for this exercise, I intentionally tried to avoid making rookies the MVP on either side. It's a lot of expectation. But this is the one team I'm going to do it with. I have Jaden Daniels as my offensive MVP for this team. He's actually my pick to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think his level of accuracy, his level of ball security, the best turnover-worthy play rate in Power 5 history in the 11 years that we've been doing this in college, I think he's such a good fit in Cliff Kingsbury's offense too. I think that was a deciding factor between Washington going with him or going with Drake May. I think it was Cliff Kingsbury and the things that we used to see him do with Kyler Murray and the things that we used to see Kingsbury when he was coaching in college, throwing outside the numbers, getting rid of the ball quickly, taking deep shots when they're there, having that mobile quarterback. And not that Drake May is not mobile. Jaden Daniels has special mobility. Special. I believe he was 11th in the country last year in rushing yards among all players. I believe there was only 10 running backs in the country in college football last year that had more rushing yards, than Jaden Daniels did. His feet are absolutely freakish. I do. I think he's got Lamar Jackson-ish feet. Like that good. And you watch him, and I know Caleb was Caleb again last year outside of a few games, a Notre Dame game, a few games with turnovers, but Jaden Daniels was the best offensive player in college football last season. And
no doubt.
He deserved the Heisman. Everybody's, why? He lost 3 games. He didn't lose 3 games. LSU gave up 142 points in their 3 losses. Jaden Daniels did not lose 3 games. Don't make it a quarterback stat. The LSU Tigers lost 3 games, and their defense played better last night than he game last year. But that's not the point. The point is, I think Jaden Daniels is special. I really do. I think within the next 3 or 4 years, he's going to be in MVP conversations. I think he's that good. I could use one more weapon in this offense, and we'll see who emerges, because now we just traded Jahan Dotson to Philadelphia. We're looking at Terry McLaurin and a lot of questions. There's young kids, and I like this supporting cast too. Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler at tailback. Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott at tight end. Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown makes some plays here and there at receiver. Luke McCaffrey, I think you've got a lot of pieces to work with. This is not an offense that's bare. They ran the ball reasonably well last year, but I think Daniels adds another dimension with his feet. He's super accurate, and I really like in the preseason that I've seen him make very quick decisions in getting rid of the football. You don't see him rattled. I don't think he's going to be rattled, and I think the dual threat ability is going to take this team a long way.
I'm very bullish on where this team is going. Now, I have them at 6-11 here for this record prediction. I'm very tempted to give them 7-8 wins. I really am, because I love where this team is going. But I sort of, after having their initial prediction, because I think I was right around 8 games, I had to say to myself, okay, am I just thinking about best case scenario? Because for as much as I really love the fit of Jaden Daniels getting to go to Washington, I had Drake May as my QB2 in this past draft over Jaden Daniels. However, I will admit that of the places that Jaden Daniels could have gone that I would have been a fan of at number 2 overall, Washington is one of them that I like for the reason that you mentioned. I think Cliff is at least going to be able to get creative enough with everything that Jaden brings to the table, so I am sort of excited about that. But I do think it's still going to be a little bit of a 2-3 year process for this team. I love what they did in free agency. They really went out and got a lot of different players. The backbone of this team, I think, is much more towards the identity of Dan Quinn than it was Ron Rivera. And you don't often get an opportunity to switch over the roster as much as Washington did this offseason. So I'm excited about where they're going. I think it's a little bit more accelerated. They need, in my opinion, one more offseason to sign a big name free agent. Like, for example, if they would have added Brandon Ayuk to this team, like, okay, that's a slingshot, right? But you'll have the opportunity to get a wide receiver one. I think NFL teams do every single year when it comes to the trade market, free agency, or the draft. There's a couple of other players, but you look at their offensive line, completely different. And that's where we get into my offensive MVP. I think it's just the offensive line in general, because I agree with you. I was so impressed with the leap that Jayden Daniels took last year. Is very clearly the best player in all of college football, deservingly won that Heisman Trophy, deservingly was drafted as one of the highest players in this past draft. But especially as a rookie quarterback learning the NFL for the first time, you need a good offensive line to give you a little bit of time, even if it's an extra half second. And Washington's offensive line was not very good last year. Sam Cosmi, I think, was great at that right guard spot, and he comes back to play that right guard spot. Andrew Wiley, a little up and down, sort of like he was when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs, but at least he is a familiar face on the right side of that line. So they got right tackle and right guard figured out. It's a new center, it's a new left guard, and it's a new left tackle. And they're still kind of trying to figure out exactly who's going to be in each of those spots. But Biotish comes in, Nick Allegretti comes in. That side of the offensive line, I think the true MVP is going to come from somewhere along that offensive line, because you've got to be able to give Jayden Daniels time. And they're going to be the most valuable player because they're going to allow Jayden to learn through his rookie year and not just run for his life and struggle. So, of course, I think Jayden, MVP to the true sense of the word, it's him. But I really need this offensive line to be the most valuable unit and play like a really, really good cohesive group with their best five, whatever that is, because I need Jayden to be able to develop, because I think he's got the talent to be a really fun starting quarterback in this league. So I got the offensive line as my MVP. What about defensive MVP for this team?
So Dan Quinn, I think his biggest task, other than just handing the keys to Cliff Kingsbury and Jayden Daniels with the offense, is just changing the culture on this defense. They allowed the most points in the NFL last year. They were just a disaster last year defensively, right? And I'll tell you what, Dan Quinn wants to change the culture, and who better on the field to get as a culture changer, and he's still a great player in Bobby Wagner, man. Just get back with Dan Quinn, do it like we used to do it in Seattle, and he's still one of the best linebackers in football. 7th in overall grade last year, second in run defense grade with a 91.5. Now,
crazy.
Obviously a little bit older now in the coverage waivers, and you need, most linebackers can't cover, or it's their specialty, and you got third down linebackers. Very few linebackers can play the run that well and cover. He used to be able to do it, but even so, look, they were 31st in run D grade last year. They were just getting mauled up front, and Bobby Wagner changes everything about that. We saw it when he was with the Rams, how they were terrible in run D other than Aaron Donald, and then he goes in there and they're great. So he still makes that impact. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer one day, and I think if you're going to bring in a guy, and I really like both of their additions they made at linebacker with him and Frankie Louvu. Louvu's an odd player as a converted edge player, and he still blitzes on third down a lot because he's a good pass rusher, but he's also become a really good run defender. I think this is a similar situation to last year. Remember last year with the Bears when they signed both Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards?
Yes.
The level of improvement that you had, and it showed for the Bears, at linebacker, the level of improvement you have for Washington, going from what they had last year and Jamin Davis. I think they're moving him to the edge this year if they didn't cut him. To go from Jamin Davis and the guys they were rotating in and out last year at linebacker to Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, that might be the best run-stopping pair of linebackers in the league together. It's up there, man, with Warner and Greenlaw and those guys. Louvu's become a really good run defender as he's gotten more used to the position, but I think Wagner as a new leader on this defense, and he's going to be the captain. He's going to be the green dot in the helmet, right, and all that stuff. He's still as good as any linebacker in football. I think for Dan Quinn to bring him in there to really transition this young team into the future and really have, and I like a lot of the veterans they brought in, but especially Wagner, when you just talk about what all those kids, especially on defense, they draft a lot of defensive kids too the last couple of years. They just need that leader in the middle, and Bobby Wagner is still that guy. He's still really, really good. I think he changes the culture of this defense.
Yeah, my MVP is it's John Allen on the defensive line, but it's more about, I wanted to talk about the defensive line overall. We got people in the chat, kind of talking about Washington's edge rushers. That's another area where, I said, they'll have a chance to draft a wide receiver one in the next couple of years. They absolutely need to get a top-tier edge rusher on this team, because right now it's Cleveland Farrell, it's Dorrance Armstrong, it's Dante Fowler. Like, that's just, it's not good enough of an edge rush group. And the reason why I have John Allen as my MVP is because, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, he's got to lead by example. Like, he has to have a monster season this year. When you look at this team post Montez Sweat trade, so from week 9 on, 60.6 pass rush grade as a group. That was 29th in the NFL. And from that point on, for the rest of the season, they only had 126 pressures, which was the lowest in the league. And it's not like they had this massive influx in talent along the defensive line this year. They just really couldn't afford it. There weren't really those options for them to bring in a top tier edge rusher there at that spot. Now, I love them adding Johnny Newton from Illinois in the draft, who I think is a stud, and I think he's an absolute steal where they got him in the second round. I think that him and Daron Payne and John Allen, like, that's a great trio of interior guys, and now they can just focus on the edge players. But John Allen still has to be the guy for this team, and he's been able to have a decently high pass rush win rate over the last couple of years, although I think it was his best pass rush year when it came to a win percentage last season. I just need it to continue to go up for him. I think it's got to be the best year yet for him in that pass rush category. Drake in the chat was talking about Daron Payne as well. Like, he also is somebody who Daron Payne plays a crap ton of snaps. Like, he plays over 900 snaps a season. They've got this guy on the field so much. It's hard to consistently have good run defense and pass rush grades when you're playing that many snaps. But seems to be like it needs to be the best year from both of those guys, but I need John Allen to lead by example because I don't know who else does on this defensive line, and they're absolutely going to need it. What about a breakout player? What do you got there?
I'm going to go back to the offensive side, and I think Jaden Daniels opens up the run game as well with his feet, and I think you need guys in that run game. I know they signed Austin Eckler, but he's not going to get all that work between the tackles. The guy that is Brian Robinson, and look, through his first 2 years, very quietly, he's had a very solid 82.3 rushing grade, top 25 marks last year in yards after contact per attempt and missed tackles forced. He's going to be the main back between the tackles on the early downs. He can catch the ball a little bit too, but I assume that most of that work is going to go to Austin Eckler. And Eckler even himself talked about, he's like, look, I'm not the back that's supposed to get all that work anymore, to get 300, 350 touches. Like, I don't do that. I don't run much up the middle anymore. I don't have a whole lot of that in me. Brian Robinson's going to be that guy. And I think there's going to be a big jump. I think a 1,000-yard season is coming because as long as that offensive line is at least solid, Jaden Daniels and what gets added here with the read option threat and what he can do, you can't crash down. You can't crash down and play Brian Robinson and give Jaden Daniels the edge. I think the added dimension of Daniels' feet and making people and a lot of RPO that's going to be in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, that is an added dimension where, like, linebackers have to freeze, edge players have to freeze. Everybody's got to freeze. It makes everybody else's life a little bit easier. So even the run game gets centered around Jaden Daniels, and I think the biggest beneficiary of that is Robinson, and he's a good back. Look, he's a solid back. Is he the best back in the league? Is he Derrick Henry? Is he Christian McCaffrey? Probably not. But I think he can be really, really good. He's an angry runner. He's physical. He wants to hit people, and I think he's the exact presence you want between the tackles. And then you have Eckler to complement him. So I think Robinson getting this early down work in this offense with Jaden Daniels as a read option threat that they should use on every run play. There is not a run play where Jaden Daniels shouldn't at least be a threat, whether it be a bootleg threat or a read option threat, right? Robinson, I think, has got a 1,000-yard season coming. I do.
I love the specific call out. I love hearing that on the show. I'm going to go to the defense side of the ball. I saw some people in the chat bringing up Jeremy Chin. He is my breakout player here. I think that he could be the chess piece, right? And when he came into the league, everybody was like, "Oh, what is he? Is he a free safety? Is he a strong safety? Is he a slot defender? Is he a linebacker? What is he?" And I think that second year that he was in Carolina, when he was grading out pretty well, he was having a lot of versatility. Carolina was playing a lot better, specifically as a defensive unit. His grades were its best, but 3 out of 4 years that he has been in the league, he hasn't had an overall season grade above 60, and they just have not figured it out with him. I believe Dan Quinn's the guy to kind of figure this thing out with Jeremy Chin, because you look at his track record, and again, I bring up a guy like Jaron Kearse, and I know Kearse didn't have a great year last year when it came to just overall efficiency and PFF grades, but the previous 2 seasons, he was used all over the place. He was used as a box defender in the slot, a free safety. You know, it wasn't quite an even, like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split, but it was plenty of reps at every category, and yet his grades were still high. It was above 70 in each of those last 2 seasons. So Dan Quinn has a mold for that type of a player. So I'm excited to see him in this defense. I think that it sort of will be his best year, certainly since that sophomore year that he played very well. And I'm looking for Jeremy Chin to be a big-time breakout player in a creative role that Dan Quinn's going to be able to kind of bring up for him. What about best rookie? I'm looking at it now in our show sheet, and I'm glad that you're bringing him up because the chat's been talking about this player since we started this little segment on the Commanders. But go ahead, best rookie. Who you got?
Yeah, and look, so I had to go away from Jaden Daniels for once, right? But no, I think there's a lot of good candidates on this team, but give me Mike Sainristil, still the rookie out of
Rookie
out of Michigan. Yeah, playing the nickel, another guy that Dan Quinn. I know when I saw that Dan Quinn got Mike Sainristil, I was like, oh, he's gonna love him, man. He's that another versatile guy in the slot, very knowledgeable in coverage, a ball hawk, 6 interceptions and 6 other pass breakups last year at Michigan, including an interception that sealed the national title game against Michael Penix. He's a dog, man, straight up. I mean, a ball hawk, hitting people. I believe I've heard him mention before that he models a lot of his game after Mike Hilton from the Bengals. It is a similar style. It's so aggressive. It's so much fun to watch. And I think, again, he's one of these guys, first of all, coming off a national championship season in Michigan, but one of those guys, again, not only do you need talented guys in a defense like this that struggled so badly last year, you need guys with attitude. You need guys that change the culture, right? I talked about it with Bobby Wagner. Mike Sainristil is that guy, man. For as many talented guys as Michigan had on their team last year on defense, Mason Graham, Junior Colson, Will Johnson, all those guys, Mike Sainristil was actually the heart and soul of their defense. And
yeah.
Absolutely. And here and there, does he miss in coverage going for the ball? Sure, but not too often. And his combination of just attitude and football IQ, I think, is everything Dan Quinn needs. And he's a versatile football player. He's a willing tackler. I think in the same way that you just talked about Jeremy Chin, I think Sainristil is just another guy that when I saw they drafted him, I was like, oh, Dan Quinn's going to build this thing the same way he did in Dallas. He's just going to get all these versatile players. He's going to get all these chess pieces. We're not going to have to worry about Bobby Wagner in coverage because he's going to have a million guys that can fly all over the place, right? Sainristil brings it. It's absolutely, look, guys are going to have rookie moments, but he's going to do it at 110%. And I think there wasn't enough of that in Washington last year. I think they got really discouraged with the way they were playing defense, and it only snowballed from there. Sainristil's a guy who's going to keep punching, man, and keep punching until the end of the game. I think he's another guy who was the exact guy they needed as another leader in their defense. I think he's going to be awesome.
I'm going to go with, we talked about somebody who needs to step up in this receiver room outside of Terry McLaurin. I saw some people in the chat talking about Diami Brown and how he could be a good vertical threat. I agree. That's where he was used best when he was at UNC, and I would love to see, them really focus on him as a vertical threat type of receiver because I think he can give them good ROI. Why not Luke McCaffrey as a potential best rookie for this team, right? I mean, like he's got the famous last name. His brother's Christian McCaffrey, and he's playing the wide receiver position though, and he's a slot receiver, but he's a bigger, taller slot receiver. So that makes him an intriguing option for this team. At Rice last year, 58.3 contested catch percentage, and also a 68.3 separation percentage. So this is somebody who I was really impressed with at the Senior Bowl as well, just the nuance of how he played the position, the route running knowledge, how he gets off the line of scrimmage, how he sets up defensive backs no matter what leverage they're playing. He understands how to attack them in certain ways. He's got really good hand usage, active hands when he's hand fighting, to try to get that separation as well, create that throwing window. Somebody's got to step up. There's going to be plenty of receiver snaps to go around for a receiver to be able to step up outside of Terry McLaurin. And I think that maybe by the end of the year, Luke McCaffrey perhaps ends up being one of those guys. We know how much Jaden Daniels loves to attack vertically from the slot. Those slot fades that we saw so much from Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors last year, set up Luke McCaffrey for a couple of those slot fades, and I think that he will give you the ROI that you are looking for. So that's who I got as the best rookie. I know you were going to mention Mike Sainristil. One of us had to, and I saw that there, so I figured that.
And McCaffrey, look, McCaffrey's a great shout too, because like his development. First of all, at Rice, I thought his game was just so professional. But I think one thing you have to remember too, he came into college as a quarterback, right? He was trying to play quarterback.
Yes,
first at Nebraska, transfers to Rice, still to try to play quarterback, and just couldn't get there. And he moves to receiver. And he was immediately just carrying their offense. He was the best offensive player. Immediately, just moves from quarterback to receiver. Okay, that works. That's a McCaffrey. Okay, cool. Like, I think his game is so professional considering he was trying to play quarterback for 3 years in college, and he just took over. Immediately, he walks over to receiver, and he's one of the 20 best receivers in college football. I think I'm with you. I almost picked him. There's so many great guys to pick in this draft class. It's my favorite draft class in the league. We mentioned Johnny Newton, too. If he's healthy, if he gets off the Jones fracture in his foot, he's an animal. He's an absolute animal. Johnny Newton up front. Brandon Coleman's starting at left tackle. That was a surprise to me that I believe he's gonna start at left tackle early on. I mean, you got so many good candidates, maybe more than any other team in the league. But no,
Ben Sinnott as well. I don't know if you were mentioning him. I was looking at their depth chart, but he's another one.
Ben Sinnott's another. He's just a football player too. That's the fun part about this class. They just drafted football players, man.
Yep.